Good evening, everyone, or at least it's evening for me. I know some of you may be experiencing morning on the other side of the planet, or later whenever you come across this. So, good day. Have a lovely day. Yes, hi. It is Tuesday here in the land of Laura, and this is another episode of To Write and Have Written, and that is 2 weeks in a row that I have remembered to actually introduce the show. So, definitely getting better. Hello, friends in the chat. Thanks for stopping in and saying hello. And we got some fun stuff happening tonight. First, I do want to just quickly mention this is not the fun stuff, but if you've been here on the show regularly, one of our regulars, Natalie Bridger, she's Bridger Dogs in the chat. And I doubt she's going to be here tonight. She had kind of a rough day. So if anybody happens to know her on social media, it might be a good day to hop over and say something kind. So I just wanted to say that. And then on a much happier note, a much more fun note. So it's December 1st, which means NaNoWriMo has officially ended. Hooray, all of us who survived NaNoWriMo. And I did win. I put in a little over 60K, so I'm very proud of that. But one of the things that, when you complete NaNoWriMo, you get your winner's goodies, I think they call them. And so you can get a bunch of discounts and all kinds of fun stuff. Yay, Seeker 1 Nano 2, high five, virtual high five. But one of the things was a discount code for World Anvil. And I'd heard of World Anvil, but I didn't really know that much about it. I was like, I got a discount code. I'm going to go poke at it. And oh my gosh, they're starting a world building event, for the month of December. And okay, I'll check this out. And I'll do, look over here. And I was, hey, there's, Shy Red Fox has commented on something on the site. So I'll check that out. Oh, Shy Red Fox, who again is one of our regulars here on the show. She's commented on a lot of things. She's written a lot of their blog posts. She's actually like a really big deal. And now I'm like, how did I even miss this? So, hey, Bridger, you are here. Okay. Thanks. Sorry. And anyway, so Shy Red Fox, Amy, if you are in the chat, I'm now in awe and I have joined World Anvil and I'm trying to follow your lead. So thanks for putting out some good examples there and we will try to follow you. So, okay. And so the only other reminder I had was it's the top of the month. So if you have subscribed with Prime, which is your absolutely free way to support this, use your Amazon Prime membership. You get a free subscription on Twitch. And so it's time to renew that if that's how you do it. Very much appreciate that. Or, please, I'm still running the Help Me Clean My House pandemic sale, and I would love to send you some books. So I would also appreciate that. So, hey, yeah. Yes. So, sorry, I just saw the Shy Red Fox Amy has replied to me in the chat. And so now I'm going to go learn all the things from your tutorials. Thank you so much. Okay. And then, because nobody wants to listen to me talk about my world building, I will say though, the World Anvil, because I'm just writing about world building, which basically at this point I've been living in this world for years. So it's like writing nonfiction because it's not actually like writing dialogue and emotion, right? I'm writing nonfiction, but about fictional things. Anyway, they wanted me to write 10,000 words in a month and I had more than 5,000 by this morning at 3 a.m. So yeah, it's going to be fun over there. So, all right. But all that aside, we have a guest tonight. I'm going to try to bring Chris in. Hey, here we go. And I'm going to remember to actually turn on his audio. Look at me. I'm such a professional. Yeah. So welcome, Chris. So as you guys can see on the screen, we have ChrisMorrisCPA.com. That gives you a good indicator along with all my promo on why Chris is joining us here tonight. He is an author. He writes nonfiction on a variety of awesome things. I just have to mention Whispers in the Pews. It's a really good topic. Perfectly Abnormal is another book, but honestly, the one I want to say, just because I love the title, is Oh Snap, I'm Making Money, Now What? Which is what he's here to talk to us about tonight. Chris is a CPA who specializes in working with, I have to say this very carefully, creative entrepreneurs who need accounting, because every time I say creative accounting, I feel very sketchy. So I need to say that carefully. But I met Chris at a conference for the first time some years ago. He's just a fabulously nice guy. I have called him with accounting questions, and he didn't hang up on me, which is probably the best endorsement I could give him. But I did want to ask him to come tonight and answer accounting questions for us. So, all right. And I'm sorry, I'm just catching up on the chat. Yeah. Okay, we're good. Okay. I want to make sure I didn't miss anybody. So I do want to just preface our accounting discussion with, I know we usually have several authors from Oceania. I know we've been seeing some replays in Europe. We have people here from many different states, even in the US. So this is definitely not Chris giving you legal advice for your particular personal situation. So with that clear, all that, he does have fantastic information, and you probably can contact him privately for much more specific information, but that is not what we are doing here today. This is Chris chatting with me about generalities and then telling you where you can find very specific information. So, all right. With all that, let's just start with saying why do I need to do my accounting? Why can't I wing this? I'm a writer. I like words. Numbers used to beat me up on the playground behind the school. Like, that is not what I do. You know, what, and I know, like, honestly, that's the attitude of a lot of writers, which I'm sure you have encountered when we call you in tears or whatever. So coach me through first why this is important and why I shouldn't just pretend that it doesn't exist until they come for me. I mean, I guess that's a good reason too.
Let me start by saying I'm sorry that numbers beat you up on the playground. That's a really sad thing. That really makes me, shed a tear. That's a real tear there, I promise. Beyond the terrible joke, I'm a CPA. I'm required to have a few terrible jokes.
You know what? You're a CPA. We give you all the latitude for the jokes, right? Because we know those don't come naturally. So we'll work with you. We'll coach you along. Yeah.
I have been accused of being one of the only accountants with a personality. I don't know if that's good or bad. I guess I'll let you guys be the judge of that. Sort of the bottom line reason why you need to worry about showing your accounting, specifically on the revenue side, is because the IRS is very interested in making sure that any revenue that comes in, that they get their piece of that. The good news for a lot of authors is that, especially when you're in the beginning stages of writing, if you're younger and you're in your craft, then it's not going to be that difficult for you to actually record a loss, meaning that you spent more than you earned. I know that's usually how it feels for me anyway. I feel like I usually spend a lot more than I earn on my writing enterprises. But the reason that you need to worry about it is because the IRS says so. It's kind of that straightforward.
Freaking IRS. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I was told by another CPA who also made terrible jokes, so I know he was the real thing, that because, there are certain, I guess, categories, that will be more likely to trigger an audit or, the heavy IRS side eye or something. And one of those being the entertainment industry, which they're used to a lot of, dubious write-offs from, and so even though I am not an A-list Hollywood actor or a rock star or, outside of my own mind, because I fall into the entertainment category, I'm still more likely to trigger something just because of the category that I'm filing in. Have you found that to be true, or is that just internet rumors, or what is? I saw this person in real life. He was an actual human, but still.
No, there's definitely some truth to that. It has to do with the category of business that authors should be filing under. That it's the same category, unfortunately, as your other CPA friend mentioned, that anyone who's in the entertainment industry is going to use. So there is, there is some additional risk for authors to potentially go under an audit. But the good news is this: I like to say it like this: an audit is not a bad word. It's not the A word. And all it really is it's a request for additional information. As long as you have all of your documentation ducks in a row, you're going to be fine. I have, I was the accountant for a mid-tier publishing house that had a terrible set of circumstances and ended up recording like a $750,000 loss. So obviously IRS is like, tell me about that.
Yeah.
Because that's a lot of money. And I was able to walk through the audit with the IRS auditor and with my clients, and there was literally no impact to anyone's taxes as a result of the audit. So the big thing that I want to sort of point out to everyone watching or listening later is that the audit is a request for more information. It's only if there's a finding that there's going to be any change to your taxes. And even so let me walk through what a finding might look like. They might decide that $500 that you spent is not considered a taxable deduction. So that would mean that your taxable income would increase by $500. You would only have to pay whatever your tax rate is in additional tax. We'll say 25%. Most people are somewhere around 25%. So what that means is that you would have an audit finding of $125, which isn't the end of the world. So there's a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety around audits that really is unfounded. Fear that, they're going to take my house and take my children. Depending on your kids, maybe you'd like that. I don't know. Sorry, that's bad joke number 2 or 4, depending on how you're counting.
We got time to go. There's no quota here, so go for it. So I just want to respond, when you say, and I completely get this from your professional perspective, and you're like, oh, audit's not a bad word. Audit's not scary. And then over here, we're like, audit is like heart attack material, right? Because there's 2 reasons that immediately come to mind for me for that. And I'm just going to play like writer's advocate over here. So we're the people over here. Like, a couple of weeks ago we had I've lost 2 weeks ago. Yeah, we had our introduction to spreadsheets. The spreadsheet is not bigger and meaner than you. You can withstand the spread, kind of thing. But I had a relative who was audited in their full-time business that they owned, which is fine. And so they came in and they sat down and just, oh, hey, how you doing? Yeah, they'll have a seat. Great. So, you do X for a living. Yeah. Do you like what you do? Oh yeah, it's a lot of fun. Okay. That's a hobby, not a business. So we're going to do everything at a different rate. And I'm like, that was their full-time job, but that was like that setup question. And, so yeah, like I just come at this going, worst case scenario. I'm a writer. I can do a lot of worst case scenarios. They can get very bad. So, but what you said then about it's not a problem if you have all of your ducks in a row, like, okay, I'm going to pull out my spreadsheets. I have all my very orderly ducklings. Like, here are my mallards. Here are my, I'm kind of everything. And so, so what I'm hearing is that we can put off that panic if we have it on back burner just in case, but if we're all set up like you're going to talk us through tonight, then it's not as terrifying. I like how you said it's just a request for more information. That actually does help. So yeah,
because really, so what produces an audit is there are a bunch of people that are so nerdy that they make me look cool, who run these programs based off of all of the tax returns that come in. And it's sort of like putting tick marks next to tax returns based off certain characteristics. And if there's either enough tick marks or a particular tick mark is put in, then that tax return is picked up and is put into, we need to audit this. We need to find out more information. That's really all that it is. It's not an accusation. It's not an assumption of guilt. Sort of like in the law field, innocent until proven guilty. I almost said guilty until proven innocent. It might feel more like what it is, but that's not what it is.
So if I've got all right, so I haven't had my audit. I'm pre-organizing so that I can, by Murphy's Law, not ever get audited because I'm so ready for it. And I am organizing all of my ducks. how many ducks should I be tracking? Let me translate that question. What are the kinds of things that we should be? I mean, obviously, if I spend money on a book cover, that's an expense. If I'm traveling to a writers' conference, how much of that is an expense? And I'm not looking here for give me a complete list of deductions, because obviously that's going to be, first of all, fairly individual, and secondly, it's going to vary by where listener geography and local law and all that. But I mean, just right. When I think sometimes it's hard for people who don't think in this dimension to actually look at what are the things that I should be tracking as far as income and outgo, and what is an expense and that sort of thing. Can you give us some guidelines, that we could go with?
Yeah. So at least in the United States, IRS sort of top level guideline is it has to be something that's reasonable and necessary to run the business. And they leave it that way because what's reasonable and necessary in one business is not reasonable and necessary in another. Let me give you my favorite example. If you're one of those people, if your business is you own gumball machines, then spending $10,000 in a year on gumballs 100% makes sense. It's really hard to have a gumball machine business without gumballs. If you're a writer and you spend $10,000 on gumballs, number one, you probably have an issue. Number two, you're a little weird. Number three, it's not going to be a business deduction because it's neither reasonable nor necessary. So that's where I want to start is with that concept. You really want to ask yourself the question, in order to run this business of being an author, is this reasonable and is it necessary? So that includes any sort of web hosting expenses, any conferences that you go to, the travel to those conferences, the mileage is deductible. Wherever, when you're staying at a hotel for a conference, obviously in a post or pre-pandemic world, because we don't have conferences right now in 2020. We have stuff online. All of that stuff is considered deductible. I have a client who who did a retelling of Russian folklore, essentially, in a fantastical sort of way, and she needed to travel to Russia because Wikipedia can only get you so far. And she had about $10,000 in write-offs that were completely legitimate because it was book research. So research trips, as long as you're careful about them, really can be reasonable and necessary. Let me talk about, in the context of a research trip, what makes it necessary. The reasonable part is easy. You can't, like I said, you can't Wikipedia everything. So necessary, you have to be able to say, going to XYZ is directly related to the book that I'm writing and intend to publish or have published because, and finish that sentence. If you can't finish that sentence in any reasonable way, then it's not necessary. And it's a non-business expense.
That's a really good formula to have, I guess. So, yeah. Yeah. So my client had a mixture of things that were business deductions and were not business deductions on this trip to Russia. The good news is that all of the flights and all of the hotel stays and most of the taxis and the Ubers and such were all deductible, and that was the majority of her expense. So because you can't very well get to Russia without getting to Russia. So that's really interesting for me as a person who likes to write, all over, and I pull from so many things. But I was in Denmark researching for The Songweaver's Vow, which is a Viking era historical fantasy, and the way I chose to do it, because I was just so cautious and I didn't want to overplay, was I didn't write off the flights, but I wrote off, like museum entries and, it's Denmark, most of the museums are state funded, but all of the places I went and the things I paid for access and all of that, those are the things that I wrote off, but I didn't write off the flights because I didn't know how plausible that would be. So I'm glad to hear that, in the future, when we travel again in 2052, I will be able to, that's something that I could plausibly, conceivably make an argument for, because, it absolutely influenced how things went down in that novel. Out the settings, so many of the things I took straight from reenactments that I was there for. So
Yeah.
it would have been a completely different book without being there. So, okay. That's good to know. I'm going to put that on my someday I will travel again list. And so let me ask, and if this is getting into too much, your situation is individual, then just let me know, because I've got plenty of other things we can talk about. But something like, I'm just going to say Venice, because there's lots of great things that could be set in Venice. So I want to go to Venice and I want to do some research, and it's going to cost me, let's use your client's figure of $10,000 to do all of this. Do I need to be able to say, and I can reasonably predict making $10,000 off this book in a year in order to be able to deduct that? Or are they more open to a long range? I am putting this book in my catalog and I am building enough catalog that long tail it's going to pay for, kind of thing. Because I'm guessing that if I put in $10,000 worth of business deductions for a book that nets me $100 and change, it's not going to be as easy to support that as a legitimate business. Maybe I'm wrong, but I would be suspicious.
I'm really glad you're framing the question that way. So the broader question that you're sort of speaking to is that it is, when does writing become a business rather than a hobby?
How long is the view here? Yeah.
And there isn't a straightforward answer to that. It's largely dependent, if you're lucky enough to be audited, and then who the specific view of that particular auditor, because I've seen clients go through audits where they are recording $6,000 to $10,000 of loss every year for 6 years because they're just struggling to find their niche. They're just not. They're trying. It's just not going that well. And there's been no problems with that. And I've also had people go through audits where a completely reasonable business expense was what was questioned. And then they quickly moved to, well, I'm not sure that any of this is really a business. I think you just have a hobby. So justify your business. And it was almost as quick as what you were saying, where your friend had said, yes, I enjoy what I'm doing. Is it my full-time job? Oh, then it's a hobby. It was almost that quick. So there's a bit of dependency upon who the auditor is and what the specifics are of those expenses. But generally speaking, I don't think, there isn't a need to tie expenses to future revenues directly. Here's a factoid for you to sort of prove that point, that businesses lose money all the time. Amazon didn't post a profit until 2009 in a single quarter. And when they did, Jeff Bezos apologized for it. So I'm pretty sure that they were a company before 2009. I'm sure we were all addicted to their services before 2009.
Yeah, so I'm absolutely aware of a lot of those, corporate tax, because they can take that and reinvest in their business and do all of the things. And my sister also works in entertainment. She's an actress, and there's so many of the things that a Hollywood film company will never make a profit on a film ever. So you're never going to get royalties because they are never going to make a profit, kind of thing. So yeah, that I'm glad you pull that out. I always look at that as that's something that somebody else can do. It's like
this is part of the mindset switch of learning So the biggest challenge I have in working with authors is to think of all of their creative enterprises as a business. So think of it more like Amazon and less of like a hobby. Even though you're treating it as a business for tax purposes, a lot of times people they're not mentally thinking of it as a business. So they draw a distinction between, well,
that
Amazon
is so
can
true.
do that, or GE can do that, but I can't because I'm just a little tiny business. And the most important word in that whole sentence is business.
That is so true because, I think culturally we draw such a distinction between the arts and real jobs, right? So there's that mental hurdle there in the first place. But yeah, I'm, as a person who owns basically 2 small businesses, I have my training and education and behavior business, and then I have my writing business, and but one's an S corp and one's a sole proprietor, so they're totally different. And I it is a mental hurdle for me to say this is a business expense too, right? So so thank you for bringing that up. I'm going to next time I hesitate, I'm gonna be like, no, Chris told me I'm a business. So yeah, great. Guys, I forgot to mention, but if you have questions for Chris, please put them in the chat. Otherwise, like, we'll keep going, and that's fine. But absolutely feel free to bring questions if you have them. So I'm collecting my things. I'm getting my business expenses. I'm starting to think of everything as business expenses. And I just mentioned, S corp and sole proprietor, and then there's like an LLC out there too. How much of this, as a typical writer who's not named Stephen King, do I need to be aware of, and how much worry do I need to do into, like, do I need to pursue one of these? At what point do I need to pursue one of these? That sort of thing. First of all, what the heck is an S corp and an LLC, and all of these things?
Well, let's start with basic definitions. S corp is short for small corporation, and LLC is limited liability company. That's what those stand for. They are state level designations for types of businesses that have certain tax ramifications. So an LLC is what's called a disregarded entity by the IRS, which means that there aren't tax codes specifically for LLCs. An LLC can be taxed however you want it to be taxed, which is both helpful and mildly confusing, to be honest. So it can be if you have more than one person involved, it can be taxed as a partnership. It can be taxed as an S corp. It can be taxed as a regular corporation, or it can be treated as a sole proprietorship. Oh, I forgot to define sole proprietorship. If you don't have anything else, if you don't have a specific form of company that you've intentionally created, then by default you have a sole proprietorship. It just means there's one owner, and you're the proprietor, you're the owner of that business, and it's yours.
And the way I think of this, and tell me if I'm doing it wrong or telling people wrong, an S corp or an LLC, that the business does its own taxes, and a sole proprietorship, the business taxes and my taxes are the same taxes. Is that a good way to break that down, or is that leading people wrong?
That's true. That's definitely true for an S corp. An LLC, okay. A lot of times, if it's a single member LLC, then it's still going to flow through onto a person's personal taxes.
Okay.
So that's not always true. Certainly for an S corp, it's true. So let's talk about why it might make sense to incorporate, and why it might make sense to incorporate as an S corp. Because generally, in terms of level of complexity, you have sole proprietorship at the bottom as the most simple form of organization. Then you have LLC, then you have S corp, then you have a regular corporation. None of you are ever going to be at a regular corporation level. That's like the John Grishams and the Stephen Kings of the world.
Come and see me in 3 years. Yeah. I've got that question further down. Yeah. By the way, Amy, in the chat, I see your question. Let's wrap this up, and then I'll bring that up to Chris. So, gotcha. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
It's okay. It's okay. Am I too dark? Do I need to turn on the light? Am I getting a little dark?
I'm looking at it as we're talking about math, so dark is appropriate. But if you would like to, if you have a light handy, we would appreciate that. So.
The only bummer is it's going to be behind me, which is going to have a bit of a glare.
Well, if it's going to be behind you, it might put you in silhouette, and it would feel like an actual audit going on, like just the dark face, like so.
I'm sorry, I don't have anything else.
No, we're fine. We're good.
Okay.
This will get rendered as a podcast in the future anyway. So we'll tell everybody that you were sitting here looking very ominous, or possibly if you slouch just a little, we'll get a halo, and then you can be like the hero accountant coming to save us. So, yeah. All right.
That's
so
too loud. That's awkward.
So, okay. So actually, let me just jump in with.
LLCs and S.
We were, yes. No, go ahead.
You were going to jump in with a question, I think. Okay.
Right, but if you were gonna finish with LLCs, let's by all means knock LLCs out.
Okay. So the primary benefit of setting up an LLC comes back to that question of, are you is your writing business actually a business? One of the things that the IRS looks at to see if you're a business is an answer to the question, is this organization acting like a business or not? And forming an LLC is one of several things you can do. That is sort of a check mark in the yes, it's acting like a business side of things. Other things that are in that category would include having a separate business account, having a separate business credit card, not mixing business and personal expenses, things like that. That's the primary benefit of having an LLC. To be honest with you, there isn't, because you're probably going to have a single member LLC and it's still going to flow through on your personal taxes. That ends up being the primary benefit. So if you, in the case that you are audited, it would be beneficial to potentially have an LLC. Now I want to sort of back up a little bit and say in some states that the fees are so onerous for having an LLC that if you're just in the beginning stages of your authorial enterprises, you might not want to do it. As an example, one of the most onerous states is California. Simply for having an LLC, you pay a minimum annual fee of $800.
Oh my gosh.
If that feels like a lot of money to you, then don't do it. It still feels like a lot of money to me, and I have a decent sized, I'm doing okay for myself, and that still feels like a lot of money just as an existence fee. If I was based in California, which I'm not, I probably wouldn't have an LLC unless I had to.
Yeah. Okay.
So that answers the LLC question, and then the S corp. So what changes when you form an S corp is you have the ability to wear two hats. You can wear a hat as an owner, and you can wear a hat as an employee. And there's certain tax benefits to that. It allows you to both pay yourself a regular payroll and take out owner draws. Well, once you break I'd say about $75,000 to $100,000 in profit, you can start to see some tax benefits to playing with those two hats. Prior to that, it's probably not beneficial to do so. And even that is very specific to your circumstances. One thing I want to point out to sort of clarify what I said is $75,000 to $100,000 in profit. That's not money in the door. That's money left after all your expenses. Otherwise, so just make sure that you understand that term appropriately. And that's what I wanted to say on those business formation topics.
Okay. So it's probably safe to say that most of us, as not named Stephen King or J.K. Rowling or John Grisham authors, sole proprietorship is going to be sufficient for where most of us are. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's usually where I land with most people that I'm talking to.
Okay. Well, we have a couple of questions in the chat. Amy is asking, how long as a business do we need to keep our records? She knows what it is for personal taxes, but what's the guideline for business records?
It's the same guideline. So an audit can go back 3 years, and in case of what they term egregious fraud, it can go back 7 years. So just to be safe, not that any of you are going to be committing egregious fraud, but the IRS might decide that they think you are. Keep everything for 7 years.
Okay, good to know. And then a sole proprietorship question. If you run multiple small businesses that are sole proprietorships, are those completely separate for taxes because they're different income streams, or combined because you're the only person getting income, spending, etc., just in two different fields with two different DBAs doing business as names? So I'm translating.
It depends. It depends on whether they are related or not. I like to think of it like this: if you could see the two businesses on a sign together for a storefront business and it makes sense, then go for it. Like pizza and wings, absolutely, those can go together. Pizza and dry cleaning, probably not. So along those same lines, if you're doing writing and editing, then those can stay together because they're both going to fall under that same category of independent author, artist, entertainer. But if you have two completely separate businesses that are in completely different categories, then they would be recorded. They would be reported separately.
Okay, that's a good guideline. I like the pizza and wings. Like I can do that. This is a distinction I feel comfortable making. So good. Amy says thank you for answering her question. So great. Okay. So so now that we've just like talked about, a bunch of scary acronyms and, 7-year audits and like all the terrifying things, let's smooth out again. Actually, I'm going to interrupt myself because Natalie's following up on her question. And so let's go ahead and get into this, mostly because I'm going to be very selfish because it kind of applies to me too. But she says her 2 businesses are dog training and fantasy novels and training manuals, which is the muddy part and I'm in the same boat where I have several behavior books that sell really well. And so it's like not my fantasy, but it's also not training, it's books. So what do we do with that?
I'd keep the books, the dog training or the training books on the author side, not on the dog training side, because the dog training side is a different type of service that you're providing, whereas the book is a product. So you can make the distinction at that level as well.
That's a really nice, easy distinction, products versus services. I like that. So Also it's what I'm doing. So I'm glad that you said that. So good. Okay. All right. Yeah. For me, it was just way simpler to keep all the books under one rather than trying to break out royalties monthly or anything like that. Because my behavior, my behavior business is the S Corp. So that would be a completely, that's more math than I signed up to do. Right. So, so something I didn't tell you, but as long as we're on the stupid joke, platform for tonight, I was very, very tempted to name this thing. I still have a hard time calling it a show, but whatever this thing is that I'm doing here on a weekly basis, I knew I wanted it to be about business skills for authors, because most authors get into this because we like story, not because we like business stuff. And so I wanted to call it Nobody Started Writing Because They Liked Accounting, but that didn't go well in the focus group. But that's honestly how I feel. Like every time I sit down to do a business, skill thing is, nobody got into writing fantasy because we love doing accounting, right? This is, yeah, but we need it in order to be able to continue writing fantasy and having dinner, like, important things. So, all right. So we've done like all this terrifying stuff about 7-year audits and all the acronyms and, everything we just threw out there about, why we need to have all those ducks organized. But one of the things that I try to do a lot here is we don't hand you a complete list of things and you need to have them done tomorrow. Like, no, this is going to be you do 5 minutes on this today and you can do 5 minutes on it next week. And eventually, in a few months you have so where do we start? What's the minimum? I am a relatively novice author. I might have stuff in process, or I've got a few things published, and I realize that, darn it, there's going to be math involved now and accounting, and I downloaded my spreadsheets. And what do I need to get started with? What are the absolute minimum that I should start doing that I can then build on?
So a spreadsheet is a really great place to start. If you
I didn't pay him to say that, guys. I didn't pay him to say that.
If you don't have a business bank account yet, which it might not make sense to have if you're spending a lot more than you're earning, then there isn't really a great accounting solution, bookkeeping solution out there for you. There are some options if you do have, even some free options if you do have a business bank account, but all the ones that allow you to sort of split between business and personal, the reporting for them is really suspect, and I can't in good faith recommend them. So I encourage people just to do 2 things: keep a spreadsheet in Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel, whichever you prefer, that where you're 2 worksheets, one that's revenue or income, and one that is expenses. And the columns are going to be dates, description, amounts, category. So that's the first thing that you're going to want to have. And then the second thing you're going to want to have is, for all of your expenses, keep a copy of your receipts. The thing that's nice is the IRS about 10 years ago decided to join the digital revolution. and they now accept digital copies in lieu of actual receipts. I use an app called Cam Scanner that
Yeah, I
allows you to
love
take a
that.
photo. Yeah, it allows you to take a photo, turn it into a PDF, and throw it onto your Google Drive all in about 7 seconds. That's the other thing that I would recommend is, assuming you have a smartphone, use Cam Scanner and start taking photos of all of your receipts that aren't in email, and all the ones that are in email, just put them in a folder called tax receipts with the year, tax receipts 2020, tax receipts 2021. And the thing that's nice about having the folder and about having using Cam Scanner is it allows you to sort of batch your work. So you don't need to feel like every time that you have a business expense, you need to automatically go in and put it into your spreadsheet. Some people prefer to do things that way. Some people prefer not to do things that way. This allows you to do either or, because you're going to have everything in one place. Maybe you're not a digital person like I am. Then I guess you could keep an actual folder. That doesn't make sense to me personally. I try to digitize everything I can because it's much more difficult to lose it that way.
Yeah,
Those are
you've
my
got
suggestions, though.
the classic shoebox full of receipts, but then the shoebox gets full and the lid doesn't fit on it and stuff starts going everywhere and I lose it, and I'm a big Cam Scanner fan too. So, okay. Okay. Yeah, good. Okay. And so, so we've got comments in the chat. Amy also organizes digitally way better than on paper. I know, right? Like, guys, I'm telling you, I'm going to have to do a whole episode just on Evernote, because Evernote does run my life at this point. And yeah, just all the things. Okay. So we've just done the bare minimum. So now let's talk about the absolute dream. This is where on Tuesday, Netflix calls me and they're doing a series adaptation of The Songweaver's Vow. And on Wednesday, Amazon Prime calls me and they're doing a series adaptation of the Shard of Elan series. And on Thursday, I realized that maybe I'm going to need some accounting adjustments. I don't know, maybe not. So when do I know if I need to upgrade? This can be interpreted as, when do I need to call Chris? When do I need a professional? When do I know I need to be doing something differently than what I have been doing? Let's be honest, it's going to take me a while on Thursday to come to that conclusion because I'm going to be so hungover on dark chocolate. It's not funny, but what would be the, what would be the process there when I'm like, I need to change what I'm doing. What's that dotted line?
Well, let's start with answering the question: when would it make sense to hire someone like me or me? And then we can talk about processes after that. There are three situations that I tell people it would make sense to consider hiring a CPA. One of them is if you're making more than, it's a very objective. If your profit is more than around $40,000 a year as an author, then you really should have someone else looking at the books and making sure that you're not missing deductions, because the tax hit is going to be pretty significant. The tax hit can be upward of 40%, and you want to pay 40% of as little as possible. So that's the objective guideline that I give. And then there's a couple of subjective ones that could bring that 40,000 down a lot lower. The first one is time management. If you're literally not able to get to the writing projects that you need to get to in your life because you're having to manage your bookkeeping, then it's probably time to hire someone to do the bookkeeping for you. You can find a bookkeeper that can do stuff for you for like $20 to $30 an hour. An average author is going to take maybe 2 hours of time a month. So that's a fairly small investment. And then the second category of subjective is, so we all have that one thing that we hate with the passion and fury of 1,000 suns. If taxes is that thing for you, then it's probably going to make sense to just get that off of your emotional radar as quickly as possible. I work with, and to toot my own horn just a little bit here, I work with everyone from the folks who do have the Netflix adaptations to folks who just published their first book, and I'm familiar with and comfortable with navigating both sort of extremes there. And you're not going to find that necessarily if you go to like an H&R Block or a
Right.
Hewlett Jackson. They're not going to be familiar with how to manage an author's world, which I am, because I am an author, and because about 75% of my clients are authors. To answer the question, how do you know if your system needs to be fixed? The short answer is, if it frustrates you or you stress out every time you think about it, it's time to change your process. You know, at some point you're going to have enough expenses, or you're going to be bringing in enough revenue where opening a business account is going to make sense for you. And once you do that, then there are different recommendations I can make for you beyond the spreadsheets. If you like the price point of free, then waveapps.com is a wonderful bookkeeping software. They have terrible customer service and support, but their program usually works, so it's usually not a problem. And I like their price point. Free is a nice price point. And then, of course, there's QuickBooks, and an alternative to QuickBooks is Xero, Xero. It's an Australian counterpart that is, or an Australian competitor that is a little more user-friendly, in my opinion, and a little less expensive, and a little more consistent with their pricing. So those are the three recommendations I would give if you're at the point where you have that business bank account and you want to see the transactions flow in automatically through a connection with your bank, and you just want to be responsible for coding what category those transactions fall into. I hope I answered that question okay.
Yeah, that's good. And I think you have a really good point about, subjective is also a legitimate reason. Like, if
Definitely.
if this frustrates me so much that it's not getting done, then for crying out loud, pay somebody to do it so it gets done. Like that's fair. And
yeah.
I'll just throw in on your objective point as well. I had such massive guilt hiring somebody to do some work that I was completely capable of doing, but I also wanted to get my book written, and there's at some point I'm going to need to sleep, right? And I was finally, what broke me down was like, okay, I can make X per hour doing this. This person costs me Y per hour. X is more than Y. Therefore, hire them and get the stuff done. Exactly. But that's not how we're frequently conditioned to look at things. So having permission to quantify it in that way is really good, because I think we don't necessarily come in with that viewpoint. So that's good to hear. So, and yeah, I'll just throw in my opinion that absolutely nobody asked for. I, as somebody who has used both QuickBooks and Xero, I'm back on Excel because I found it much less frustrating. So there are many correct answers to doing this, guys. Like we usually, there's lots of ways. If it's getting done, it's getting done. Right, there we go. So, okay. And then really important question. This is big. I have a lot of personal investment in this one. Can I take dark chocolate as a business expense?
Milk chocolate, yes. Dark chocolate, no.
Oh, no.
It's written in the IRS code.
But it's so much more concentrated. Like I get so much more, value for the same, so, okay. And I can track it so that.
Also no to coffee, unfortunately.
Oh, those monsters.
Bad times.
All right. So I do want to mention, Chris on his website has you can sign up for free monthly tax tips specifically for authors. He's not going to spam you. It comes out once a month, but it's good information, and you can get a free ebook from him as well. And is there anything else that you would like to plug that? And I actually want to mention he has a free consult, which I took advantage of, and it was so helpful and so good. I tried to pay him anyway, and he wouldn't let me because he's a nice guy. So definitely, I'm going to say, you guys, if you have questions, check out his information, check out his books, find the stuff on his website. And is there anything else you would like to plug, Chris, because this is your moment?
The only other thing I'd like to plug is I do have if you're interested in taking an even deeper dive into taxes for authors, I do have about a 3-hour course that walks through. We covered about 15% of what's covered in the course.
Okay,
You can
so
find that at learn.chrismorriscpa.com.
that's it. Because I thought I remembered seeing a course, and I went and I looked for it, and I must have missed the link off of your main site or something. So good. So I'm just going to repeat. Learn.chrismorriscpa.com is where you can get a free course for authors all over this stuff.
Free.
I'm sorry?
Not free.
Not free. I lied. I completely lied. We'll just scrub that from the record. It never happened. It is a 3-hour course that is completely worth it because, okay, guys, I'm going to tell you a true story. And I really hope this doesn't come back to bite me as I send this out into the internet where it could go anywhere. But I contacted Chris and said, hey, Chris, help. There's a warrant out for my arrest, which, first of all, was not my fault. Like 100% was a state paperwork error, not anything to do with me. Secondly, I cannot tell you how insulting it is that my only warrant for my arrest has to do with $20 of missing sales tax and not for anything more interesting. So angry. Anyway, so where I'm going with this is definitely the kind of thing where it pays to be proactive, because that moment, everything we said about, audit is the A word and it's horrible, kind of thing. Like opening that letter and being like, hi, we have a warrant out for your arrest because you haven't done your taxes properly. First of all, I had done my taxes properly. Secondly, they were hard and it was messed up. And thirdly, I really needed somebody to hold my hand while I was angry. So these are the things that it's fine. I didn't go to jail. It really was a state paperwork error and it really was not my fault. So I'm just going to put that out there. But this is the kind of thing that, the default position for a lot of us as creative artsy people is, wow, I don't like this. I'm going to pretend it's not affecting my life. But please, take advantage of the resources that Chris has put out there. Don't put yourself in a situation where things can go wrong. So like there's a short story in there somewhere. It was not a short story. It was at least a novella, and there was enough angst to turn it into like a soap opera series. Like it was full of drama and fury. Yeah. So, okay. All right. Also, Amy, thank you. Dark chocolate is healthy and should be a tax break. I completely agree. Like, contact your representatives. Like, we need to get this fixed in the tax code.
I rules. I would do that. I'm a huge fan of dark chocolate.
So as you guys can see, chrismorriscpa.com. Chris, thank you so much for coming and talking us through these things, because this is the stuff that none of us really like to talk about. I'm sorry. I know it's your thing, but I'm over here like, oh, so many spreadsheets so close up. But also, like, we really need that in order to do things like put out more books. So,
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me, Laura.
Yeah. If you guys have questions, he does have a contact form on his website. Again, Chris is a very nice guy. And I want to actually jump back to real quickly when you said you have clients at both ends of the spectrum. I think there's a very real sense of, I'm not big enough to be able to justify, getting help with this kind of thing. And I'm really glad that you mentioned that, you have first-time authors and people, like, it's a continuum, and you're going to work with people at all ends of the continuum. So I just want to emphasize, he's nice. He's not going to judge you. It's all good. He didn't hang up on me when I called him. We're great. So next week, our topic, I'm calling it Just Dance, because it's my show and I wanted to. But we're going to talk about, now that we have had this intensely business-oriented last few weeks, next week it's all about keeping business out of our creativity and just dance, just do the artsy thing, and how to do the business evaluations separately and not let it color your creative work while you're doing your creative work. So, okay, we've got, just to let you know, Chris, we've got a number of thank yous coming in on the chat, and I'm glad I listened to this on the drive home. I was like, hooray, the accounting didn't put you to sleep on the road. Really good to hear. So great. Thank you guys. And again, thank you very much, Chris. Go and check his website, and everybody stay safe and wash your hands. I will see you next week. Take care.